Hear from Darrell Evans, co-founder of Yokel Local Internet Marketing, is an accomplished entrepreneur who has started and grown businesses in multiple industries, ranging from sports apparel, financial services, real estate, mortgage lending, health and fitness, and marketing and advertising. He leads a team of online marketing experts who have helped companies like yours build a dominant web presence, increase advertising ROI, and generate revenues in excess of $100 million.
All right, hello and welcome to the Capital Pathways educational webinar series hosted by the U.S. Black Chambers. The Capital Pathways program is a 10-city workshop series designed to connect minority business owners with credit counselors, traditional and non-traditional lenders, and various other business service providers. Today's webinar will be facilitated by Darrell Evans of the Inbound Marketing Company, and will cover the topic of digital marketing. Thank you all for joining us, and I'll now turn it over to Darrell.
Kevin, thanks, and good morning to all of the attendees on the webinar today. As Kevin said, my name is Darrell Evans. I am the co-founder of an inbound marketing agency called Yokel Local Internet Marketing here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm extremely honored and privileged. All right, we're back. That's what technology does sometimes. I might have done that. This is my first time on the platform, so I apologize. If everybody can hear me, just put a 1 in the chat box really quick. Let me make sure before we get going, let me make sure everybody can hear me again. I'm back on stage, I think. Just a quick 1 in the chat box if you can hear me okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Darrell Evans. I'm one of the co-founders of Yokel Local Internet Marketing. We're a digital marketing inbound agency here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And due to the time today, I'm not going to do a deep dive on my background and how I got here. I really want to give you the time and give you the content. And if you want a little bit more of my backstory, you can certainly go out to LinkedIn. I'll have some information at the end of the presentation where you can check out more about some of my backstory. But what I want to get into today, and let me go ahead and share my screen. I want to give you all of the time and value today. So what we want to talk about today is this idea of 6 keys. What is wrong with my screen? I apologize. We want to talk about 6 keys to quick business growth with digital marketing. My background started offline. For those of you that are on this webinar and you grew up with technology, you grew up at an age where you grew up with a smartphone, you grew up with social media, you grew up with websites and the internet and Google, just know that a lot of what I'm going to share with you today that speaks to this idea of quick business growth comes from my background offline. And about 10 or so years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I learned technology. So what I'm hoping to impart on you today is this idea of a playbook. And so I think in the methodology of not just the tactical strategies that you can use in digital, which is SEO and pay-per-click and social media and Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and all of these things. I grew up with a philosophy that if you plan your strategy first, then the tactics align. I grew up as an athlete. So growing up as an athlete, you're told what to do. You're told how to stand. You're told how to get in a three-point stance in football. You're told how to hold a baseball bat in baseball. And then you're taught how to execute the tactic, which is to run, pass, kick, hit, those kinds of things. I later became a coach in sports, both in basketball and football. And I started to understand at a higher level this game of business. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is very simple methodology, but I want you to understand it as a framework to what you're going to be doing in digital. So many business owners come to my company, and over the last 7 years, we have worked with hundreds and hundreds of businesses now. We've had the opportunity to work with startups, mom and pop shops, all the way up to some Fortune 500 companies, 2 of which I can't name the name, but one of them is in the smartphone industry, starts with an S, and one is in the insurance space, starts with a G, if that would let you know. So we've got the gamut of companies that we've worked with. And so this playbook works for your business, whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large-scale business. It may work in different variations. You may have different agendas and priorities, but please understand that I'm going to share with you a framework that can be applied to your business. And if you understand this framework, the tactics that you see out there that get so many people confused won't be so confusing going forward. So my big promise for you today is that you leave with this 6-step framework that you can then begin to think about your digital marketing in a different place. Before we dive in, it's extremely important, and for those of you that are millennials on this call, and for those of you that maybe are more in my age group, where we're used to this change and what's happening with buyers, the first thing we must understand when we're talking about digital marketing is that the buyer's journey has changed. So we work with product companies, service companies, manufacturing companies, e-commerce companies. And at the end of the day, the one thing that you must understand is the path in which your buyer is going to take to buy your product or service today is not what it used to be 5 or 10 years ago. And if you're new to business, say in the last 5 to 10 years, you might know that what's happening now is normal. And if you're, in business 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, then you are having to adjust to this new path. What's important about what I'm getting at here with this idea of the buyer's journey is you're going to find that this framework is going to show up throughout this presentation and is going to show up throughout this playbook. The buyer's journey is what you must understand as we go through this process, in the fact that people are hanging out on social media today where they weren't 10, 12 years ago. They're going to Google instead of coming to your front door to get answers to questions. And we're going to develop this a little bit. And it doesn't make marketing any more complex than it was back then. But what I will tell you is that because buyers are now everywhere, and you have to be in a mindset that they are looking for products and services online the way they didn't do so 10 or 12 years ago, I want you to keep this idea that the way buyers enter your sales funnel has fundamentally changed. And that's going to be something we're going to develop as we go. So let's dive into key number one. Key number one, and I know if you've been in business for any length of time, if you've applied for financing, maybe through Capital Pathways, vendor partners, if you have been to the SBDC in your local area, if you've talked to SBA, if you've talked to a local business banker about getting funding and financing for your business, heck, if you've even watched Shark Tank, which is one of my favorite shows, you're going to find a few of the common things I'm talking about here that show up in these questions that you're asked. The very first thing I need you to focus on, and if you've got a piece of paper handy, write this down. Who is your target audience? And it seems to be an easy question, because what most people think about are the age demographic, the gender type, the type of job they do, or the industry they work in. And as we go a little bit further here, I want to start spending more time not talking about demographics, but we're going to talk about psychographics. And so we're going to color that up a little bit for you in just a minute. In our company, when we start working with a business, small, medium, or large, we always start with this idea on the screen now, which is buyer personas. So a buyer persona, very simply, is a fictional representation of your ideal customer. Yes, we want to know if they're male or female. Yes, we want to know what age general range they are. But one of the first things you must understand is that who is your ideal customer, and what kind of problem do they want to solve, and what are the pains that they're having? Oftentimes I'm sitting down with a business, and I can tell you I've probably heard it 1,000 times in the last 7 years. I'll sit down and ask, who is your ideal customer? And the answer will come back, everyone who. If I'm sitting with a real estate agent, everyone who wants to buy a home. If I'm sitting with a beauty salon owner, everyone who wants to style their hair. If I'm sitting with an insurance agent who wants to sell car insurance, anyone who has a driver's license. Well, that's actually not going to work. You have to be very, very specific online, because most of us as small businesses don't have the big, massive advertising budgets that these big Fortune 500 companies have, where we can just blast advertise everything and just work on what we call eyeball impressions, right? So on digital, you want to be very specific. So I want to walk you through very quickly an exercise, or should I say a map, and I guarantee you've never seen this before. So earlier I said you don't want to just focus on demographics, you want to focus on psychographics. You just want to get into the mind of your customer. So you can do this a couple of ways. If you've got a customer base, this should be easier. If you're brand new and you don't have a lot of customers yet, it's going to be a little bit more trickier, but I'll give you a little quick tip here at the end of this. What you're looking at on the screen is something we take every one of our clients through, and it's simply called an empathy map. Write that down. It's an empathy map. So we think about the sympathy, which is when we feel for someone. When we empathize with someone, we understand how they feel. So what you see is a very small depiction of a simple chart. And at the top, you can see we want to understand how my customer thinks and feels about their situation, about their problem that they want to solve. We also, to the right, we want to look at what they're seeing in the marketplace. What are they seeing from our competitors? What are they seeing their friends and family do? We want to see what they see. What are they hearing on the left-hand side? Meaning, what kind of advertisements are they hearing? What are my competitors saying to them? What are their friends telling them they should do? And then lastly, we want to dig into what are they saying and doing? And this goes back to that everyone's not your customer. Some of your customers are a pain in the neck. And if you've got some customers like that, you know what I mean. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to work with someone if they're going to crunch your profit margin down because they always want a deal. Sometimes they're not, they want to beat you up over delivery or price or service. Sometimes your customers are saying and doing things that indicate that they're the wrong fit. Most importantly, you want to understand what is the pains that they're going through, the frustrations, the obstacles. What do they really want to solve? They say there's an analogy that says something like people don't buy, they don't love drills. They don't buy drills because they love drills. What they want is a 1-inch or quarter-inch hole in the wall or whatever it is that they're building. So you've got to understand and be able to connect the pain. The other thing is you want to be able to connect to the gain, or what do they get by doing the thing with you? What do they really get? Sometimes people, businesses I talk to, they're so caught up in their product or service, and they don't understand what the feeling is that is associated with doing that. A lot of times I talk to people and they just say, well, they just want to insure their family. If I'm working with an insurance agent, no, they don't. They want security. If someone buys a brand new car, they want to look nice amongst their friends. No, they don't. They want the safety and security features perhaps of that car. And I don't have a lot of time to go through a ton of examples. Maybe we can come back in the question, but this simple diagram, spending time over this or 30 minutes will give you a lot of deep understanding. And I'm going to bring another quick tip in here in just a minute when we start talking about the next segment. But this is a screen that is paramount to everything we do when we're developing digital marketing strategy. We don't want to just jump into tactics. We really want to understand what our buyer is thinking. So let me move on to key number 2. And that is, how will customers find you online? How will people find your website? We call it traffic. So I've got a picture of traffic. And if you live in Atlanta, if you live in Las Vegas, if you live in LA, if you live in New York, you hate traffic. Well, on the web, we love traffic. You must be able to get people to your website effortlessly. But if you don't know how they're thinking and feeling, what they're saying and what they're doing, and how they search the web, remember that buyer's journey has changed forever. If you don't know how they're searching online, even if you know who they are, you're never going to be able to get your website positioned in front of them to solve the problem or service that you can provide. And in fact, they'll be going to your competitors. So let's talk about what this really looks like. Your whole objective with doing that first exercise is to figure out those pain points and how they're searching. I'm going to give you 2 quick examples. The most important thing you need to think about when you are looking at your buyer's journey is that you must identify the 3 stages your customer goes through. I can tell you they are very, very simple to understand, but I'll tell you that you might be making this very mistake that we find most businesses make. The first stage is the awareness stage, where someone becomes aware of a problem. 12 years ago, I got divorced. There was about a 10-month window of time where I was unaware that my soon-to-be ex-wife wanted to be out of the relationship. I was at that point unaware that she wanted to be out of the relationship. And I'm not knocking the situation. I'm not picking on her. I'm just saying I was an unaware person at that time. I wasn't even potentially a customer for a divorce attorney. When we found out that we were having issues in our marriage and we started looking at things, I became aware of the problem. So I had to start looking for solutions. But what an attorney would have liked is for me to come knocking on his or her door so I could start talking about divorce proceedings. Well, that's not the way the journey works. There were lots of variables. So in the awareness stage, your problem becomes aware of a problem. They then move to a consideration stage as to what kind of solutions could solve my problem? What are my options right now? And certainly in my situation, divorce wasn't the only option. In fact, it was the last option, right? So, and there's a lot of different things. I'm going to give you I'm going to jump out of a personal situation and tell you about a plumber. I mean, plumbing company. What could a plumber have in an awareness, consideration, and decision stage? So just a few years ago, we had a startup plumbing agency come to us, and they were in a very competitive market space here in Las Vegas. And they said, we want to grow our water heater repair business. Well, it was going to be super expensive for them to compete in the traditional marketing sense. Radio, TV, billboards, yellow pages, all that stuff was going to cost them a lot of money. They had very little money. So what we did was we sat down and figured out everything that could go wrong with a water heater that would lead someone to needing a water heater repair. And so we started in this awareness stage and broke down all of the things that could possibly go wrong. We ended up in the consideration stage. We produced content, and I'm going to bring that up in just a second, so that we could get to people before they had an absolute need for a product or service, or a plumber in that case. The decision stage is where most of you want to show up. The problem is only 4% of people are ever ready to buy. There's a study by HubSpot put out in 2014, and it says that 96% of people that hit your website are not even ready to buy it today. So if you don't have anything on your website that addresses the awareness and consideration stage, and you're only trying to show up in the decision stage and try to compete with all your competitors, then you're going to have very, very thin profit margins. You're going to lose out on a ton of sales. And really, the advantage is going to be, and I'm going to make this point a little bit clearer here in just a second, but the awareness, consideration, decision stage are the things that you must understand. We often are hired for SEO. People come to us and say, hey, I need an SEO agency. Well, the problem is if you don't know what you're going to rank on the first page for, you don't need SEO. And if you don't stop and figure out what kind of problems and concerns, let me just go back to the plumbing example. Someone gets in the shower. Matter of fact, put yourself in the shoes. You go get in the shower this morning, and you turn on the hot water on the shower, and cold water comes out, and you let it run for a second or two, and you think it's going to get warm, and it doesn't get warm. Maybe you're not for sure that it's the water heater. All you know is the water didn't get hot when you took a shower. So what we did for this plumber, for example, just because of time, I want to give you this quick example. We set up a blog post that talked about why the shower might not be producing hot water. Believe it or not, 1,700 people a month search that phrase, why there's no hot water in the shower. We ranked #1 for that particular phrase. In fact, if you Google that phrase, no hot water in the shower, after we're off this webinar, you'll find our client, Pure Plumbing. They are at the #1 position and have been for years on that phrase. We didn't get ranked. We weren't trying to get ranked for water heater repair because that's the big competitive phrase. So SEO is all about building content around your website that speaks to your buyer's pain. SEO can work for even startups. The next thing is social media. Everyone runs around talking about social media. Let me just share with you one thing about Facebook, and particularly Facebook, because we say that every business should be on Facebook. Facebook has 1.6, 1.7 billion users logging in, 75% of them logging in every day from their mobile phones. Facebook, however, and social media in general is not a place where people show up ready to buy anything. So you have to think about networking. Right now, I'm sure many of you are networking in your communities. You should be thinking about how to use Facebook as a networking tool to grow your presence, grow your influence, and build relationship. Too many people get on Facebook, and it's easy to run Facebook ads, and Facebook, of course, is now an advertising company, as you guys know, but it's super easy to run ads, but no one's on Facebook to buy, yet you can get customers and buyers from Facebook. You got to think in the world of networking to get Facebook to work for you. And again, I'm happy to go deeper on this through a Q&A, but just due to time, I want to let you know that Facebook is a great platform, but you've got to think networking. Think about what you would do at a networking meeting. You wouldn't walk into a networking meeting, a BNI, a LaTip, or anything like that in your area and just instantly start blasting your product or service. That's the way you got to think about Facebook. And then lastly, I won't touch too long on this, but Google AdWords is a fantastic vehicle still to this day. If you know how to use the platform properly, sure, cost per clicks have gone up over the year. It's extremely competitive. It isn't like it was in 2004 or 5 when I first got exposed to it, but done right, Google AdWords is a fantastic way for a company with no online presence whatsoever today to start driving qualified traffic and qualified customers to your business. Okay, so let's dive into key number 3. One of the biggest complaints we hear when people do get traffic to their website is they don't have any leads from their website, right? The thing that we want to talk about with getting someone to your website is if you've done your work with your buyer persona and you've identified content that they're searching for, pains that they're trying to solve online, well, then when they get to your website, you've got to find a way to get them to raise their hand. It does no good to open your analytics and see people coming to your website and bouncing off your website. You've got to find a way to get them to raise their hand. And so the way we do it in our office, the way we do it in our organization, is we build out what we call awareness, consideration, and decision stage types of content. And again, due to time, I'm not going to break down every single one of these, but I will tell you that one of the best things you can do for your website is to build some sort of checklist or download, and each of these fall into different categories. But I'll tell you right now, the #1 thing that converts for most of our clients is awareness stage content. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Here's one from our website. When companies come to our website, they typically are struggling. The number one thing they're struggling with is how to turn website visitors into leads and sales. So what we did was put together a one-page document that just breaks down our 6 steps, and someone can opt in and give us their email address for this. Some people say, well, Darrell, people download stuff online all the time. You're right, but we give them something that's valuable to their buyer psychology, right? We're not trying to sell them SEO. We're not trying to sell them pay-per-click. We're not trying to sell them social media. We are giving them an answer to their question, which is 6 steps to getting more website visitors into conversions. So once they do that, they can go then read our blog, and we've got tons and tons of blog content. The other thing you have to do is you have to put calls to action on your blog. So many people start blogging and they say, well, blogging doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work if you don't have anything for that traffic to do after they read your content. So what you have here is a kind of a blown up picture of what we call a call to action image. So essentially, because we know this is the most valuable download on our website, we want this to show up everywhere. So this is sort of a tough way to see it, but this is at the bottom of a blog post so someone can take the next step with us. The other thing that's really effective is there are free tools out there on the internet where you can have a pop-up show up on your website to also get people, because you never know where someone's going to go on your website. My company's website has hundreds and hundreds of pages. I never know for sure where someone's going to come into my website based on their pain, their frustration, or something they're going to read. And this goes for all of our clients. So we set up these very light pop-ups around that one-page offer, or around that one-page checklist, whatever that might be. So we're always asking visitors to take the next step. Okay, so those are 3 things. Number 1, you want to set up some type of offer on a landing page. You want to then make calls to action throughout your website, and you want to do pop-ups that don't interrupt them and just are very, if they are the right buyer, then this pop-up in front of them is not going to bother them. Okay, key number 4, just to kind of speed things up. Your buyers are not ready to buy the minute they hit your website, not even after they fill out that form. And this is something we struggle with businesses we have to talk to them and talk to them and talk to them about your buyers not being ready. I wish I had time to tell you. If we do get time in the Q&A, remind me of the Safe Flight story. I'll tell you the Safe Flight story when a rock broke my windshield when I was driving on the freeway. They probably did this the best of any company I've seen in about the last 10 years. But here's the thing. You should be using email to nurture and educate your buyers. If they're in the awareness and consideration stage, like for instance, go back 12 years ago before I got divorced, I didn't go rush to an attorney to start talking about divorce papers. There were all kinds of things that happened over 10 or 12 months before we ended up there. When I was in the awareness and the consideration stage, I didn't have an attorney who was talking to me about questions that were on my mind, the problems, the things that were specific to Nevada, and all of these types of things. Your buyer is looking for information along that journey, and we use email marketing as a way to do that. A lot of times what people think about with email marketing is they think send an email, give them a coupon to buy something, send an email and tell them to come back and check out on my website, send them an email and get them to do something. We are completely 180 degrees opposite. We are taking people through an educational process. So whether it's a 5-part series, an 8-part series, in my prior company, we had a 53-part email series. Now, I'm not trying to scare you by saying you have to write 53 emails, but you should educate your buyer for as long as it takes until they're ready to buy. Key number 5. When I talk to businesses that have customers, they're usually making this mistake. They're not thinking of their customers' lifetime value. I spent 12 years in the mortgage industry. The early part of my career, I found out that a traditional adult would buy a house 7 times over 30 years, 7 times over 30 years. So that means they were going to need a mortgage in most cases 7 times over 30 years. So if I lost a loan to Bank of America because I was a small mortgage brokerage firm, I didn't care because I knew there were 6 more opportunities for me to get an at-bat in the game of getting that mortgage business. So your goal isn't a one-time sale. And so often we make a sale with a customer and then we run looking for the next customer. Well, let's be clear about one thing. It's 7 times more expensive to get a customer the first time than it is to get your same customer to buy again or refer a friend or family to you. The world of customer satisfaction, everyone says they provide great customer service, great customer satisfaction. The fact of the matter is you have to be in the customer relationship management business, which means once you get a customer, you've got to treat them like gold, not say, okay, well, I've got my revenue, let me go find another customer. You have to have an investment strategy that invests back in customers. There are, I don't know, easily 10 to 12 holidays a year. You should be speaking to and marketing to your customers during those holidays, not just having them buy something, but just speaking to them. You should know their birthdays. You should know their anniversary dates. You should be sending content out to them on those holidays at the very least, so that you have touch points and you remain what we call TOMA, top of mind awareness. You want to stay top of mind. A good customer relationship software system will help you manage this. There are tons of tools out there like send out cards. If you're not familiar with that tool, you can automate campaigns to send out cards to your customers. But again, customer relationship management is so important to growing the value of your business. When I talk to businesses, that one of the earliest things I want to know is what's the lifetime value of your customer? How much are they going to pay? How often are they going to buy? And what is the chance that they're going to buy 2, 3, 5, 10 times? Because we can build a system around that that's going to help us scale that business. And the very last thing we want to touch upon, and this is something that I find because I talk to more entrepreneurs with 1 to 10 employees than I talk to that are 10, 50, 50 to 100, 100 plus. And that is that we as small businesses, and by the way, I didn't have a company with more than 10 employees until my current company. So let me make sure I'm clear. I've had 6 companies before this. Not one of them had more than 10 employees until this current company. So I'm right there with you. You've got to begin to think early on how to build a system that scales. Scaling your business can't happen if you're in the way of everything that has to get done. In 2002, I read a book called, 2001, I read a book called The E-Myth, which I would recommend to each of you, by Michael Gerber. And he uses an analogy early in the book about McDonald's. McDonald's is one of the most successful burger franchises on the planet. They don't sell the best burgers. In fact, you might die if you eat too many of them. But yeah, that's my little joke about McDonald's. But they have the best system because the average age of the worker there is 17 years old. How does the most successful franchise, one of the most successful franchises in the world, have the average age of a 17-year-old working for it? Well, it's because they have systems in place. And what Michael Gerber talks about in his book is that systems remove discretion from the human being error. So system is going to remove the human error component. For instance, their French fry example. Someone has to go make French fries. They go to the fryer, they get the bag, they tear the top off the bag, they put it in the fry basket. The fry basket goes into the oil, which has to be 375 degrees. They push a button, it cooks for 3 minutes, whatever it may be. The person lifts the basket up, it sits for 1 minute, they put it in the tray, they dip it over, they squirt two things of salt on it, and they move it on to the server. There's no room for error there. As a small business, if you have to do everything in your business, you don't have a business, you have a job. One of the first things I encourage small businesses to do is to think about how you can outsource everything you're not good at. I have what I call a self-assessment from the entrepreneur, which I make them go through a skills assessment, and they have to gut check themselves about what they're good at and what they're not good at. And if you're not good at it, you need to find someone else to do it, because as much time as you and as much energy as us entrepreneurs think we have of learning how to do it, the problem is you're not spending as much time in your gift, which is giving your product or service to the world. You've got to find things. There are companies out there and websites out there like Upwork and Fiverr and all kinds of websites where you can find inexpensive labor that can help you. And then ultimately you want to start to begin to think about those job roles in your company that are going to make your company thrive and flourish. I personally, in my day today, year in and year out, we're in our 7th year, I'm trying to get fired from jobs every single day. So yes, I still have jobs in my company, but I'm trying to get fired every single time we grow. Every time we add new revenue, I'm trying to get another job out of my plate or out of my business partner's plate. Okay, so let's do a quick recap, and then I'll take some Q&A if we've got time. Here are the 6 keys. Number 1, you've got to really understand your buyer by creating buyer personas. Number 2, you've got to figure out how you're going to attract visitors to your website. And you can't do everything. You've got to figure out where your buyer is now and get in front of them. Number 3, you got to find a way to create leads. You got to get people on your website to raise their hand and say, I'm interested in speaking with you. Number 4, you've got to turn those leads into sales with automated nurturing. You can't be everywhere and you can't take every phone call. And if you try to, you're going to make mistakes. You've got to use very inexpensive technology. By the way, I didn't give you the technology. You should all be taking a look at the very least, a constant contact tool or perhaps a MailChimp. Those are the 2 most frequently recommended tools I recommend to smaller entrepreneurs. Okay. You want to then begin to delight your customer. Figure out how you're going to increase the lifetime value of your customer. Don't ignore them after they buy. I see it so often. If I have someone come with 500 customers, we don't go online looking for new traffic. We try to go to the 500 and figure out what we can do to reestablish that relationship and increase lifetime value. And the very last thing is scaling for growth. So before I wrap up, I just want to give some acknowledgments to the US Black Chamber of Commerce, the Millennials Redefined Program, and Capital Pathways for having me out today. I apologize, we go super fast. We have had a couple of snafus at the beginning, but because we did go very fast, I want to let you know that you can download a copy of the 6-step playbook that we use in our business, and you'll get a 6-part free email series. There's nothing to buy. I have nothing to sell. I just want to educate you more on this, and obviously in 30 minutes, we just don't have time to go too deep in it. So if you'd like to go out to yokellocal.com/playbook, you can download a one-page document that breaks down the 6 ideas we talked about today. And then over 7 days, 6 or 7 days, you're going to receive an email a day from me with some deeper dive education that I would encourage you to go through. So with that, if we've got time, I don't know how I'm going to get out of my screen. We'll take questions. And if you guys have any contact information that you want to reach out to me, if you have some questions, shoot me an email, reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or whatever the case might be. So I think that's my time. I apologize, I'm about a minute and a half over, but let me exit the presentation and see if we have time for any questions. Thank you so much. Okay, I think I'm back on. Okay, it looks like we're back on, and it looks like Kevin has asked. It looks like we got a few more minutes here. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Will asks, can you please expand on marketing on Facebook like networking? I also want to remind you of the Safe Flight story. Okay, so 2 things. So let me go to Kevin, if you would please let me know how much time. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If Kevin can just chime in for me on how much time we may have. So let me start with Facebook while Kevin does that. Facebook, so I'm pretty sure that you're all networking to grow your business. I know it's as much digital that continues to flourish, we still are building relationships. When you're building a business, the best thing you could possibly do is build relationships, and build relationships with as many people as you possibly can. In doing so, you're not always building a relationship to sell something. You're building a relationship because if you study science, they say that every human being will know and have relationship with about 200 people. So if you build a relationship with 200 people and they know 200 people, then you now have access to 200 times 200 people. That's kind of the methodology. Social media is very much the same way. With Facebook, Twitter, any of those channels, your goal is in building an audience that has relationship with you. Let me give you a practical example. So I have a company called Yokel Local, as you know. I have not had a personal Facebook page, or should I say a personal business page, not my personal profile, but a business page until earlier this year. Up until this point, I have not once tried to sell anything on my business fan page. I have simply gone out and started building relationships with entrepreneurs and inspiring them through my content. So I'm not at all in a hurry to try to sell anything. You can do that with Facebook engaged posts. You can do it with a Facebook like campaign. You can do it with Facebook Live, where you can go on and teach your craft. And if you go by Yokel Local Internet Marketing's Facebook fan page, you can see that we do lots of Facebook Lives. So we're just constantly trying to give value. What I'm doing by doing that is I'm trying to show, number one, my expertise and credibility. Number two, I'm letting people find me when they're unaware that they may even have a problem that they want to solve, or they may want to have one in the future, and I'm already top of mind. So that's kind of how you use Facebook. Let me go to the Safe Light story really quick, because we were talking about automated nurturing. So I'm driving I'm leaving a mastermind meeting one day, rock hits my car, shatters my windshield. It's a Friday. It didn't shatter my windshield, it just cracked it. Over the next 24 hours, it spidered pretty bad. So I start looking online like a traditional person does. I go online, I find Safe Light Auto, which you guys may have in your area, huge company, nationwide company, and I give them a call, and I don't know anything. So I get on the call, the lady takes me through the questions. Is your car safe? She's prospecting, or should I say, she's asking all the probing questions to get ready to earn my business. Well, little did I know, they weren't even open. This is number one, they weren't even open. I couldn't even buy the service that day. They had a call center set up with all of this scripting and all of this relationship development, because they understood their buyer. So this is the main point. They understood that I was going to make a decision in the next 24 to 48 hours, and they knew they were closed, as well as many of their competitors were closed, they knew how to handle me as a customer. So what happened was, she didn't just give me the price. She asked me for my email address, and she asked me, could she email me the quote? Well, she didn't. She finished the call, and she says, well, can we set the appointment up for Monday? So this was a Saturday. I said, well, I don't really know, because I don't know if this is a good price or not, right? I'm a traditional consumer. I don't know if that's a good price. She says, well, let me ask you this. If I drop the price by 20%, can we book the appointment right now? Which was a very smart sales tactic. Close the deal before I get off the phone. Don't give me a chance to find a competitor. Well, I'm a savvy consumer. So I said, no, because I still don't know if 20% off of that price is a good price. So fast forward, she then sends me the email on Sunday. I get a call first thing Monday. Before I even have a chance to call another company on Monday, she's calling me. So I'm gonna kind of conclude the story with A, she did a great job of prospecting me. B, she knew my buyer timeline. She knew my psychology instantly. She knew that if she could drop the price, she'd have a chance to close me. And she tried, it just didn't work. And then D, C, or whatever, she sent me the email. I got another email on Monday, and she called me on Monday morning. They were aggressive about understanding where I was in the buyer's journey. So that's kind of the example. Every business doesn't work that way, but if you're an emergency service business like that is, you have to do things like that. If you have a longer sales cycle, you have to put a nurturing campaign in that's going to be a little bit more longer term. So great question. Any advice for a general startup or working to build a sports apparel brand? So general advice, also, okay, yeah, I think they're recording the webinar. So Nicole, general advice. I mean, I got a lot of general advice for startups. I can tell you the number one thing in terms of building a sports apparel brand. I guess I'd want to know, maybe, are you wholesaling, retailing? I'm sorry, can you ask just a little bit, give me a little bit more on that, and I'll come into maybe a little bit more specific answer. There's a lot of ways I could answer that. John Stafford, where do we find the webinars on the site? Okay, I think Kevin's going to answer that. Will, thanks for the story. That was good. So since we don't have another question, let me just kind of go back to Nicole's, or did she give me a better one? She's going to email me. Okay, very good, very good. I can only tell you that when I talk to startups, so our company doesn't specialize with startups. I will state that out of the gate, typically speaking, because startups typically don't have the funding, which I know that's what Capital Pathways is trying to help us all do here. But I will tell you that a lot of this framework that we've talked about, if you're a startup, you need to understand your marketing framework. And if you can walk in and talk to a VC, in fact, I'm going to a pitch competition here in a couple of weeks. If you can go in and talk to a VC and you've got a marketing plan that talks about your buyer and how you're going to reach them at a different stage than the competitor, because see, no one, you're not new at what you're doing. Someone's already done it, right? Someone's already done it. I said earlier that I would give you a couple of quick tips. If you're brand new and you don't know your customer, here's a couple of quick research tools you can use. Go out and study the reviews that your buyers have left working with your competitors. So Nicole, for example, if you're in the sports apparel brand, find a different brand that is sort of competing for your audience and study the reviews. Let me give you a real world example. We have a brand new company that's in the tutoring space. They're in Sacramento, California. They're a regional franchise tutoring firm. So they want to tutor elementary, middle school, high school kids on English, math, science, and writing. What they thought they were doing was reaching all their buyers at the bottom of their sales funnel at the decision stage. What we showed them was all of the reviews that their customer was leaving for their competitor. And what he didn't realize was he wasn't connecting with the psychology of that buyer. So even though he's got a relatively new business, he's only been open 6 months, we were able to just go out and survey what his customer was saying about his competitors and how the pain that they were in, and then the results that they got. And now we're in the process of rewriting the copy on his website, rewriting his ads, and he'll have a much better result. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Latasha asks, I have a security company. I do services, not sales. How do I use this? I have a security company. I do service, not sales. I'm assuming that's services, not sales. So is your firm a security firm that works with, two things come to mind. I've got home security in my head, but I'm also thinking commercial security for for businesses. Can you maybe just add a little bit of clarity there? I'm not sure if I'm following the question. So while Latasha's adding a little bit of clarity there, I do services, not sales. At some point, someone had to sell something before you do the service, though. So I guess I'm trying to look for some clarity there. Business. So you're doing security for businesses. So let me see if I'm leaning into this right. So are you not if you're not the business owner, then this might be a little, or if you're not doing the marketing and sales side of it, this could be, this methodology may or may not apply. I'm sorry, Latasha, I'm happy to answer that through an email. I'm just not sure if I'm following you. Someone in the organization has to make the sale. And if it's B2B, maybe, let me see if I can attack the question that way. If you're a business selling to a business, right? So very much like our company, we're a business selling to a business. We work with a lot of B2B companies, not just business to consumer. So business to business sales, it's the same thing. When I, as a business owner, want to sell to a business owner, I have to understand the pain and frustration that business owner is going in. I like to say in my business, and again, I'm just making an analogy that runs off the top of my head, and I apologize if I'm not specific for your question. Feel free to reach out to me, Latasha. But in my business, I know that my customer doesn't wake up in the middle of the night trying to wonder how he's going to do Facebook ads. My customer doesn't wake up in the middle of the night trying to learn SEO. My customer doesn't wake up in the middle of the night wanting to learn Google AdWords. What that customer wants is leads for his business, his or her business. So I have to speak to the pain, which is he wants to grow, he or she wants to grow their revenue. They realize they have to be online. They happen to know that SEO, pay-per-click, and social media are where people are saying you need to be, but none of them have a desire to learn the technical aspects of what it is that we do. So if I were to just try to sell SEO services and PPC services and social media services, I'm just commoditizing myself with the rest of the world. So what I speak to is, do you need more traffic? Most of the people that come to us typically come for 3 reasons. Number one, they don't have an online presence and they're not getting any traffic to their website. Now, there's a lot of ways to get traffic. Number two, if they are getting traffic, they're not getting leads from their website. So we have to figure out what's going on with their buyer psychology, their messaging, their copywriting, so that we can get people to raise their hand. And then we got to put the technical pieces in place to get people to trade information so that they become a lead. Number three is getting those leads to convert. One of the biggest concerns I have with small businesses is they don't have any sales training. And a lot of our younger entrepreneurs today haven't grown up in sales. And we think that technology is going to cure everything. Technology doesn't cure anything. Technology assists. If you can think of a baseball diamond, I don't know if you play baseball or not, but someone starts off at home plate, they hit the ball, they go to first base, second base, third base, and then they score. All technology can do at best is get you to third base unless you're in the e-commerce space. Remember that. Technology will get you to third base unless you're in the e-commerce space. And ultimately, you've got to be good at human relationships and selling. And that's something that a lot of digital marketing people don't talk about. John, you asked, I mentioned that I was in the mortgage business at one time. Yes, for 12 years. You're new in that business. Awesome. How did I use digital marketing to attract home buyers and also realtors? Man, John, I could go deep on this. So 2 things. So I started my mortgage career in 2000. I exited the industry in 2012 officially, although I started my marketing agency in 2011, but I sold my company during the year of 2011, 2012, and I officially let my license go in 2012. So 2 things with buyers. So this is where I really honed my craft with buyer personas. So John, in your business, just understand on the buyer side, a first-time buyer doesn't think like a move-up buyer, doesn't think like an investor, doesn't think like a luxury home buyer, etc. Doesn't think like a VA buyer. Okay, each of those buyers have different emotional needs and concerns. So by developing and cultivating that understanding, you're going to be able to attract that messaging. So, for instance, a quick example of content that I would use back in the day when I was targeting first-time buyers was I would have a free report on my website. Free report reveals 10 mistakes to avoid when buying your first home. That would be an example of a download that'll be the final question for the day. So for the sake of time, this will be the last question. And anybody else on the webinar, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to respond through email. But this may help everybody because everyone has, in John's case, there's these multiple buyer personas, right? We think everyone is a home buyer. Well, they're not. They all think differently. So for the first-time buyer, I might put something on my website that said, Freak Report reveals 10 mistakes you should avoid when buying your first home. If I was speaking to an investor, I would speak to the topic of cash flow, right? So investors are more interested in cash flow. The two differences between a first-time buyer and an investor is a first-time buyer is extremely emotional about the purchase because it's the first time they've done something like that. Whereas the, okay, I'll put my contact information back up there in just a quick second. The investor is thinking about cash flow. They don't care what the house looks like. So hopefully, John, that helps there. With realtors, John, I was a little bit counterintuitive. So I only marketed to the top 200, 300 realtors in my area because I wanted to build a very stable business. And as you know, if you don't know, most realtors don't close more than 3 transactions in a calendar year. So there might be 10,000 agents in your area. In my area, at the time, there were 10 to 15,000 realtors in my area at all times. I would only market to the top 300, maybe 500 of them because I knew they were full-time in the game and they could support my business in the long run if I built relationships with them. So the way I used to do that was I used to do something called a Realtor VIP Concierge program. And what I would do is I put on workshops twice a month where I would go to Subway and buy lunch for about 15 realtors and invite them over to my office using a educational approach, the very same thing we're talking about online today. So I would do, at that time I was sending direct mail. Today, if I was doing it, I'd likely use YouTube and Facebook to invite realtors to my office for a 30-minute to an hour educational session twice a month and educate them on what they should know in the market as it relates to lending. So you're in a great career. Let me go ahead and grab Washington, was it Washington Row Security? Okay, awesome. Okay, so let me grab my contact information. I don't have it, so let me just do this here. Let me type it in really fast. And thank you guys all for your participation and your questions. I am happy to respond back to you in email. I will mention as we wrap up, I may take a couple of days to get back to you. We have an all-day marketing event here in our city tomorrow. So I will be, our company's putting on our very first marketing event. If you go out to our website, you'll actually learn more about it. But so I might get a couple of days in responding back, but I promise you I'll get back to you before the week is out. You're welcome, John. Thank you for participating. Yadira, thank you for participating. Latasha, thank you so much for the question. Nicole, I look forward to hearing from you. Kevin and USBC, thank you so much for having me. And if there's anything else that you need from me, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to be of service.